All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Single Ventricle Chat. We are so excited that all of you could join us this evening. Each one of us here tonight has a personal tie to single ventricle disease. We all have different experiences, backgrounds, and stories that make up our personal journey. We wanted to create these chats to connect the single ventricle community as a whole, including patients, parents, caregivers, clinicians, and researchers to collaborate and engage on different Fontan-related topics. To create change in single ventricle care, we need each and every one of our voices captured. We hope that when you leave here tonight after the event, you feel uplifted and supported by this entire community. I am proud to be a part of a network that prioritizes families and patients with not just each other, but through engagement opportunities like this one here tonight, but what also the network is working on. Before we move into the patient, parent, caregiver only chat, you're going to hear from 4 representatives from each of the work groups that make up the Fontan Outcomes Network. The chat box is open for any questions and comments at any point throughout the event, and we really hope you utilize it. Next slide, please. So please be aware that the first 30 minutes of the single ventricle connection chat is being recorded. However, once we break out in the parent, patient, and caregiver breakout sessions, they will not be recorded for patient and family confidentiality. Next slide, please. The chat will be hosted in English. However, if you'd like to use closed captions, you can enable them by clicking the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. I give about like 10 seconds for that. And then next slide, please. So as I mentioned, confidentiality. The confidentiality that takes place during the single ventricle connection chats are a component for quality improvement activities at the Fontan Outcome Network. Patient and parent stories are intended solely for the knowledge and use of the single ventricle connection chats attendees and shall not be disclosed. Attendees have a responsibility to maintain patient privacy as well as confidentiality of all attendees. Sharing any stories that identify a parent or patient's name is prohibited. Next slide, please. So our agenda today, incredibly exciting. We have so many amazing speakers that are going to be joining us today. We're going to start off kind of learning what a learning health network is, an introduction to the Fontan Outcomes Network. Then, as I mentioned, we'll have 4 representatives from each of the Fontan Outcomes Network work groups that are going to tell a little bit more about what we do. And then after that, we are going to stop the recording, as I mentioned, and then break out into our breakout groups. Next slide, please. I am so thrilled to be a part of this rockstar team that brought the single ventricle connection chats here to us all tonight. I think many of us know Amanda Harper and Stacy Lynn. Amanda is an individual born with single ventricle disease, and Stacy is a wonderful mother to a daughter with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Next slide, please. So for the duration of this entire chat, we are asking for no medical advice whatsoever. Please note that while these events will focus on topics related to single ventricle healthcare, they are not intended to present specific medical advice or guidance. We cannot answer any questions regarding an individual's healthcare. Next slide, please. So please update your name for us so we can kind of see where everyone is from. So for step 1, just click the participants if you have not done this before. You can look at the icon below. Click on the participants icon located at the bottom of the black toolbar. Then hover over your name, click more, and then you should be able to have the option to rename. And then step 3, type your name, your state or country or wherever you're from. Next slide, please. So annotations, we have our next slide is going to be showing a map of the entire world. And what we'd really like to be able to see is where everyone is from. So annotations at the top of your screen, find the view options button, click view options and annotate, and then participate by drawing, stamping, or writing on the screen. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we would love to know where you are joining us from tonight. Awesome. I see a lot of people in North. Ooh, I see people in California, it looks like, Europe. Wow, we have Argentina. Wow, that's fantastic. Welcome. What time is it there right now? Is it around the same time as us? I'm not totally sure. 7 p.m. Okay, so it's not that far off from us, or at least me right now in California. All right, next slide, please. So for this first presentation, I want to introduce Dr. Tom Glenn. Dr. Glenn is a part of the executive leadership team with the Fontan Outcomes Network, as well as a co-founder of the Single Ventricle Patient Day. Currently, Dr. Glenn is finishing up his pediatric cardiology fellowship at Rady in San Diego, and will be doing a 4th year of fellowship in Fontan Care at University of Michigan. Tom is also an individual that was born with HLHS and has Fontan circulation. So Tom, take it away.
Thank you, Meg, for that kind introduction. And thank you everybody else for being here. It's so exciting to see so many clinicians, families, and patients registered for today's event. All 380 of you guys, coming from over 80 different care centers in 9 countries around the world. It's an incredible turnout for our first Single Ventricle Connection chat. Now I'm going to start by showing a short 1-minute video that we basically just want to introduce you to the learning network model that the Fontan Outcomes Network is built under.
How do we get the best help for a little girl with a chronic condition? That's what her parents want to know. That's what her specialist is trying to do. She's just the type of patient these scientists and technologists want to help. Patient experts. How do we get the best help for a little girl with a chronic condition? That's what her parents want to know. That's what her specialist is trying to do. She's just the type of patient these scientists and technologists want to help. Patient experts who've survived and thrived with the same chronic conditions are also eager to help. Who else can help? Countless specialists, researchers, policymakers, community members, and improvement scientists with incredibly valuable information and resources who have never connected until they find each other in a learning health network, a growing community that helps millions of people and improves everything from health outcomes and everyday quality of life for patients, their families, and research discoveries. How do we get the best help for a little girl with a chronic condition? How do we get the best help to all patients? We do it together, healthier together. Learning health networks were named one of the top innovations in the past 25 years and have won some of the country's most prestigious awards for social innovation, quality, and safety. This is a revolutionary leap for healthcare, connecting the science of modern medicine with the wisdom and care of a community.
So like you heard in the video, a learning network is a community comprised of researchers, clinicians, and patients and their families that have one ultimate goal, and that's to improve the health of whatever group they're focused on. The individuals in the learning network use data to guide clinical care, research, and quality improvement. Learning networks ultimately hope to improve outcomes on a very large scale. The information we obtain can be brought to the laboratory where we can discover new knowledge and create new innovative care models. And perhaps the most important thing that learning networks build is a culture of collaboration. It's one of the few places that you'll see patients, families, clinicians, and researchers all working together, and that's what makes it so unique. Next slide, please. This community of patients, clinicians, and researchers comes together to leverage both their individual expertise and their pooled data to improve health outcomes using the philosophy of all teach, all learn. Each center has something to teach, each center has something to learn, and pooling our efforts together magnifies both our shared knowledge and our impact. And this allows us to have continuous improvement and learning. Next slide, please. Many of you have heard of the National Pediatric Cardiology Quality Improvement Collaborative, or NPC-QIC. The NPC-QIC has been around for 20 years, since 2002, and began with an objective of reducing interstage mortality, that is the mortality between stage 1 Norwood and stage 2 Glenn, for children born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. This work has now reached the sustainment phase with a goal of sustaining the improvements that have been accomplished. The NPC-QIC then transitioned to phase 2 just a few years ago, and the focus shifted to the period between diagnosis, whether this occurred as a fetal diagnosis or at birth, and the first birthday. This work remains in the active phase with ongoing improvement efforts and evolution. And as we look towards implementing our next stage, we realized that we needed something that expanded our view to include care throughout the lifespan into adulthood. And we chose to expand from only including individuals with hypoplastic left heart syndrome to all single ventricle heart disease or Fontan physiology. We launched the Fontan Outcomes Network, or FON as we like to call it, very recently and started with 12 pilot care centers. Next slide. So now I'd like to introduce everyone here to the Fontan Outcomes Network. Next slide. The vision for FON is to improve outcomes and quality of life for all individuals with single ventricle heart disease and Fontan circulation. And our mission, or how we're going to accomplish this, is by dramatically improving these three elements: physical health and functioning, neurodevelopment, and emotional health and resilience. Next slide, please. We have many ways that we're planning and working on achieving our mission and vision. We are working on developing a registry that will catalog all of the clinical data for patients throughout their lifespan. We will use this data to conduct investigative research and clinical trials. We will apply quality improvement science and create a learning platform. We'll provide a rich foundation of clinical information to partner with our genetic data. We will partner with various stakeholders to augment the impact of our network. And lastly, like we're doing today, we will build a community of patients, families, clinicians, and scientists. Next slide. Like I mentioned, we launched last year and started with 12 care center partners. As you can see on the slide on the right, these are our 12 initial care centers that we started with. And starting in June, we're expanding to include 18 new care centers for a total of 30 care centers. Next slide, please. Now, I know this is a bit of a busy slide, but listed here is the FON governance. As you can see, there's many individuals involved in creating what we have to offer. The executive leadership team for FON includes Carol Lannon, our collaborative science director, Jack Rychik and Sasha Apatowski are our executive co-directors, and Stacy Lynn and Diane Pickles are parent directors. And lastly, myself, I'm the patient director. We have 4 work groups that represent community building and engagement, quality improvement, data, and research. As you can see listed here, there's many scientists and clinicians in each of these work groups, but most importantly, I want to highlight that each of these work groups is comprised of patients and parents, and you'll see those names highlighted in yellow, further demonstrating how instrumental patients and families are to our network. So hopefully you have a better understanding of what a learning network is and what we at FON are all about. I'm now going to hand it back over to Meg. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. The Fontan Outcomes Network is something that I have been so incredibly excited about as a patient, and one of the driving factors for us putting this on for all of you tonight. We want you guys to see the work that we're doing and how exciting it is for us in the patient and family community. So next you will hear from the 4 representatives of the 4 work groups that work with the Fontan, or that make up the Fontan Outcomes Network. Next slide, please. So first you are going to hear from Michelle, Program Coordinator for the Single Ventricle Center of Excellence, Fetal Heart Program and Single Ventricle Clinic at Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago. Michelle?
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here, and I just want to share that the community building and engagement is led by, certainly Stacy Lynn, mother of Zoe and Rockstar Mom, and 3 other amazing partners that Megan Didier and Kurt Schumacher from Mott Children's, and Fred Wu from Boston presenting the Fontan expert and ACHD role. The goal is really to formalize and develop processes that engage the entire community and network with a ladder of engagement, meeting the folks where they're at and building their community. What that community looks like may look different for all different centers. And it's our goal to try to connect and provide more support for patients and families and providers. Next slide. Sorry, I didn't start my video. So how does this, next slide. How does this work group impact me and why does it matter? This population is near and dear to my heart, both professionally and personally. I want you to focus your eyes on the 54-year-old man in the lower right corner with the purple shirt, sitting in a chair in a hospital room at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Greg had a Fontan in 1985, and he never met anyone until he had his Fontan. He was born in 1968. Do the math, that's not acceptable. You can see in this picture, he's got his hospital band, but what you can't see is that he has a PICC line, cardiac drips, and a pole that would accompany him in the halls while he waited and for a chance for a heart transplant in 2014. What you also can't see is the army of incredible teams that had supported him, family, friends, inpatients, and new friends that he would meet on the floor of Mayo, countless other providers and centers, both locally in Wisconsin, where I grew up, in Minnesota, and across the country, well represented today. My older brother had significant univentricular heart disease and was not expected to live, but he did, and he thrived, and he had a Fontan that extended his life beyond expectations. Pictured above him is his little sister, me. Let's take this time to remind you that siblings are each other's first friends and lifelong companions. That is why this is so important to me. I grew up with Fontan physiology in my family. Sibling support, family support, making sure you have access to insurance is so important, and I know it. And that's probably why I led the life to move down to nursing, and probably why I never became an orthopedic nurse because of my brother's broken bone. But through it all, Greg thrived, grew, and became a man with hope, courage, and drive to do all the developmental milestones that his sister and his brothers did. Nothing stopped him reaching beyond boundaries of what was expected and what could be done. He finished high school, graduated college, started a career, married a fine young woman, and started a family, all within the expected time frame. I share the photo of him on the left, where he's standing in Mayo, and my daughter is playing. His daughter is the same age as my daughter, and they were our first. We experienced that together. She loved Uncle Greg and really inspired her to be who she is today. And what you can't see in the close distance is the family that is left behind. And that's really important because the research that we had in 2014 did not support him for better outcomes. And I really want that not to happen again. And I really want people to connect early, often, and really live a life to their fullest. I want to just end with one thought. While research and outcomes did not prove to extend my brother's life beyond 57 years, this is why collaborations matter. You matter. I believe in science. And last night, a patient of mine in the ICU, who I met prenatally, his sister visited. She told her brother that she wants to be in the hospital every day and told his nurse she wants to be one too. This is why connections matter.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's so great to hear about people who are working in this network with such personal attachments to the work that we're doing. It really helps drive the purpose and reason why we're doing this every single day. Next, we have Dr. Opatowski, who is a professor of pediatrics, director of the Adult Congenital Heart Disease Program at Cincinnati, and co-director of the Heart Institute Research Corps. And please give me a warm welcome.
It looks like Sasha was removed from the call. He just rejoined. Sasha, are you with us?
I'm with us, but unfortunately, for some reason, my video won't work.
Okay, no worries.
I guess I can go ahead without video. So despite the little snafu, good timing, I can't tell you how excited all of us are that so many of you have joined us. It's really an honor to have the opportunity to tell you about this, this work group because of its central importance, and also because I guess many of you aren't sure what might be going on in this work group talking about data and analytics. The Data and Analytics Work Group serves to operationalize collection, validation, and sharing, as well as analysis of fund data. And key functions include coordinating the implementation and testing of the registry database, implementing data management tools and analysis strategies, and developing policies and procedures around the collection and use of data. Next slide. Actually, that slide. The work group is made up of 4 co-leads at present. Mike DiMaria, a pediatric cardiologist from Colorado. Erin Hoffman, parent of a child with single ventricle heart disease and president of Additional Ventures. Adam Lubert, an adult congenital cardiologist in Cincinnati. And Rahul Rathod, a pediatric cardiologist and leader of the FORCE initiative looking at MRI and single ventricle heart disease at Boston Children's. Next slide. The term data can be used in different ways, so let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about characteristics or information such as a measurement or a statistic collected through observation, usually used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or calculation. Next slide. Often when we think about FON, or at least when I think about FON, we jump to our aspirations of what we want to accomplish and the key methods we'll use to get there: research and quality improvement. Here, the Petronas Towers in Malaysia, representing research and QI in this diagram, and the data is hidden below. Click, please. If we don't measure something and record it as a measurement that's usable as data, we really can't learn from it, learn from that experience, no matter what models or advanced techniques we might apply. So high quality data really serves as a necessary foundation, both for research and QI. And like a solid foundation, there are a multitude of considerations and decisions to make as we develop our approach to data. Next slide. So what does that involve? What is the work group working on right now? First and foremost, next click. We've been hard at work with our database vendor, the Broad Institute of Harvard and MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts, to develop a user-friendly backbone. Is that? It's okay. You can go ahead. Sorry. User-friendly and flexible database. We've also been considering and defining options for how data are input by centers. We plan to support a number of different approaches, including manual data entry, that is typing information directly into the database, or bulk exporting data from the electronic health record to upload to the FON database, as well as other options. We've also started to create crosstalks with other key data sources to enable sharing of data going forward. This may mean translating units of a continuous variable, as you can see here, for height from inches to centimeters, or it might mean defining what categories of other variables map to categories in other data sets. This is very time-consuming, careful work being led quite wonderfully by Jeff Theobald, our data management specialist. I just wanted to give him a shout out and thanks. Next slide. It's also critical that the data should be accurate. But what is, I'm sorry, that are high quality, but what exactly does that entail? Of course, they should be accurate, but we also have to make sure that we collect meaningful information. Collecting unimportant information isn't just a waste of time, because we only have so much time to check and recheck accuracy. All else being equal, the more data we collect, the less accurate the information. So we've had to make a lot of difficult and important choices as we develop our data collection forms. In addition, the questions and the data must be unambiguous. For every variable we collect, we've asked whether there's room for misinterpretation. For example, it may seem fine to ask if a patient is taking an oral contraceptive pill. That seems pretty obvious. But what if they're taking the exact same medication for acne instead of birth control? We have to be clear if we want the information to reflect the medication or a combination of what the medication is and the reason. And what's the right answer? Well, it depends on what we're trying to achieve by asking that question. Finally, we have to be sure that what we collect is being measured similarly over time and between centers. The same diagnosis may be called something a bit different at different centers. And for clinical testing, the information reported might vary, as may units, protocols, and devices. And the data group has been working on that diligently. Needless to say, it's very detail-oriented, but critically important. Next slide. So our imperative is obvious to all of you on this call, and that's why you're here. As Susan Timmons, a parent of a woman with a Fontan circulation on our scientific advisory committee, said, well, FON is exactly as bold as it is necessary. We will transform Fontan outcomes by learning from each other, implementing change, creating new knowledge, and developing new treatments via quality improvement and research. The data work group will ensure that our data foundation will support the heavy weight of these aspirations. But to be really clear, our confidence isn't because of any of that. It's because we're building that foundation on all of this on the strong bedrock of our community, which is you. You can't imagine how grateful we are for your engagement and willingness to join with us in FON. And it's going to be incredible to see what we accomplish together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Apatowski. It is just so incredible. Whenever I listen to him, he's just so incredibly smart. And I'm so grateful that he's the one doing so much of the data for FON. And for our next speaker, we will be having Dr. Nadine Kasparian. She is a professor of pediatrics, the director of the Heart and Mind Wellbeing Center, and director of Center for Heart Disease and Mental Health Research at Cincinnati Children's.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I'm thrilled to join you for FON's first connection chat. As Meg said, I'm representing our research work group, and so I thought we'd dive in by looking at just how we define research. So generally, we think about research as the detailed study of a subject, especially in order to discover new information or reach a new understanding. Next slide, please. And in our Fontan Outcomes Network, our goal when it comes to research is to drive new knowledge, to improve care and transform outcomes for people of all ages with a Fontan circulation and their family members. Next slide, please. I'm very fortunate to co-lead the research work group with a stellar team of colleagues, including Dave Goldberg, who is a pediatric cardiologist, Richard James, who is a librarian and parent of a person with a Fontan circulation, and Nancy Pike, who is a pediatric nurse practitioner and scientist. Together, our work is focused on developing the FON research agenda, collaborating with our friends in the data and analytics and QI work groups on developing the registry, and establishing processes to support and drive research performed within FON. Next slide, please. So Sasha provided an excellent overview of data as our foundation. And in terms of research, now also known, I think, as the Tower, we will begin by collecting and examining data from medical records, which includes information collected over time as part of usual clinical care. We will then build on this by working directly with patients and families to collect data to develop a deeper understanding of experiences and outcomes. Next slide, please. Now, this may include surveys exploring the factors that contribute to quality of life, physical and mental health and resilience. It might also include wearable technology, for example, using a heart rate monitor or other wearable devices that can help us to learn more about things like sleep quality or oxygen levels, as well as in-person research visits at your heart center. How we collect data will be tailored to the specific research questions we hope to answer. And by combining different types of data, we can learn about experiences from a range of different perspectives. So to really give you a sense of the type of research we might do together, one example could be a focus on exercise. So our recommendations about exercise for people with complex congenital heart disease have evolved dramatically over past decades, shifting from exercise restriction because of concerns about safety towards recommending exercise as part of maintaining optimal health. But we still don't have answers to questions like what type of exercise is best? How often should we exercise? For how long and how intensely? And is there a sweet spot in terms of exercise for optimal Fontan health? By collecting data on how much exercise people are doing and what types, we can compare outcomes between groups and begin to really develop clearer recommendations. Now, of course, I know you're thinking people who exercise might be different in other important ways from people who don't. So it may be that in the future, we could do a clinical trial where we randomly assign one group of people to do one type of exercise and another group to do a different type. And this could help provide more definitive evidence on the benefits of one type of exercise over another. And of course, as a psychologist, near and dear to my heart is also looking at different ways to provide psychological care and support for patients and families. So for studies like these and many others, participants would need a consent with lots of opportunities to discuss and have questions answered before deciding whether or not to take part. Next slide, please. I know my time is just about up, but as so many of us have already said tonight, by building a community of patients, families, researchers, clinicians, and advocates, together we will learn, we will make new discoveries and change Fontan outcomes across the lifespan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nadine. So for our last but definitely not least group is quality improvement. And today we are going to have Catherine Dodds, who is the program manager at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia of their single ventricle survivorship program, Forward clinical program.
Thank you so much, Meg. In May of 1989, 33 years ago, almost to the day, I started as a new graduate nurse in the ICU at Children's Hospital Philadelphia. On my first day, my first patient was a Fontan with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. I had no idea what a Fontan was, no idea what hypoplastic left heart syndrome was, and I had no idea who this Dr. Norwood was. Fast forward to today, May 2022, I am the nurse practitioner and clinical program manager for the Fontan Forward program at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And I am honored to be part of the Fontan Outcome Network's quality improvement team. Our team includes myself, Kiona Allen from Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, Sal Gindi from Children's Hospital of Wisconsin, Alicia Wilmoth, our patient lead and also a physician's assistant at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Our work is guided by the amazing Carol Lannon and supported by the expert quality improvement team at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Our purpose is to guide Fontan Outcome Network's quality improvement work. Over the past year, through surveys of providers and patients, we've identified key issues to begin working on. These issues include emotional health, exercise, Fontan liver health, transplant, birth control, and pregnancy. We are just getting started, beginning with exercise, so please stay tuned as we hope to develop meaningful advice, guidelines, education, and roadmaps to address these issues. Defining moments are those events, those points in time when you experience something that changes you, something that transforms how you think, something that impacts how you move forward. That first day in the ICU 33 years ago was a defining moment for me. The establishment of the Fontan Outcome Network is a defining moment on the Fontan journey. It will change, improve, and transform care for Fontan patients and families. Centers across the country will now collaborate and create a learning health network and build a Fontan registry. We will have data, not from one institution, but from many. And data helps us answer questions. Data can influence practice. Data is power. But data needs people, or it's just data. And the Fontan Outcome Network brings people together to make sure that we ask the right questions and collect relevant, meaningful data. And the people include not only providers, but patients and parents, all of us partnering together as a community to improve Fontan outcomes and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. And as a fun fact, Katie, I have known her since my time at CHOP, and she has always just been such a bright light anytime I am there, and I'm just so incredibly grateful for her. So next, we're going to quickly go over engagement opportunities currently within the Fontan Outcomes Network outside, of course, this event tonight. Next slide, please. So building strength through numbers, that is what the network is trying to do. We're trying to build strength through numbers from a data perspective, and we're trying to build strength through numbers from a community perspective, which includes us, patients and family members. So when we are looking at what we're trying to, our three big priorities, it's going to be awareness, communication, and engagement. For awareness, we have our Heart Hero campaign, and the link is going to be brought into the chat box momentarily if you haven't seen it before. Blog posts that we're doing, and if you don't follow the Fontan Outcomes Network on Facebook and Instagram, that's where we are going to be posting a lot of that, along with, like I said, mentioned social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, along with our website. That's where you can find the different events that we are hosting, which this event is currently on it, along with the Single Ventricle Patient Day, and then any other webinars that are being hosted or anything like that that is pertaining to the Fontan Outcomes Network. And Fontan flyers that are currently being distributed to different care centers, to every care center, and you definitely have the opportunity. We are going to also be providing a link for you to bring to your own care center about different opportunities within the network. Communication, we have our monthly newsletters that is open to anyone who would like to participate. So if you have not signed up for that, please do. And that link will also be going out with everyone in the breakout sessions. We have our weekly newsletter to care center key contacts. So that was the people within the care centers within the network. So that way they're always staying constantly up to date on what the network is doing. And then bi-monthly care case review conferences that are incredibly interesting to listen to, especially if we're a patient or parent. And from an engagement perspective, we have the Single Ventricle Patient Day that we are so incredibly excited to be happening again this year. We have the Single Ventricle Connection Chats. We have social media takeovers that are going to be being promoted very shortly. So keep your eye out for that. We're going to be doing Instagram and Facebook, social media takeovers, like different stories and stuff like that. So that's fantastic. We are also going to be doing learning sessions. That's what we have been doing for the past this past year was our first year, and then also with the MPCQIC. And future opportunities for the FON work group participation is we are going to be having different quality improvement projects that we are going to be looking for participation from family members, from parents, from different patients. So that way your voice can be immediately heard by this community, not just through the engagement opportunities that I just mentioned, but the Fontan Outcomes Network wants to co-collaborate with us and try to make sure that our voices are being heard as these quality improvement projects are being made and created. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the Single Ventricle Patient Day, I, along with Tom, Alicia, and Tyler, and Amanda, You will see them all throughout the breakout session tonight in different breakouts. We are the planning committee of the Single Ventricle Patient Day. All of us were born with single ventricle disease, and we saw a need to create a resource, not just from a medical standpoint, but also a resource for us to be able to engage and communicate and get to know each other a little bit better. I know for myself, I didn't meet anyone until I was in my 20s. And so we wanted to make sure that we have the resources now, and we have the ability to, that no one should ever feel like they don't know anyone else like them. And so this is what this day is about. We want to connect the patient community in a supportive and uplifting environment to build confidence to take control of their healthcare, preparing patient advocates and building patient leaders, updating the patient community on FON activities, and developing patient-driven quality improvement recommendations for FON and network centers. And I am very excited to announce that we have a tentative date for the Single Ventricle Patient Day on Saturday, November 12th. We knew that a lot of patients were wanting to make sure this was on a Saturday, on a weekend, because it was difficult to get there if it was on a Thursday or Friday. So we were able to make it happen. And we are so excited. There's going to be an in-person option this year, as well as a virtual option. So everyone is going to be able to join that wants to join. So it's going to be incredibly exciting, and the cost is of course free. So make sure you stay tuned to our social media, our website, and sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with what we are doing with the Single Ventricle Patient Day. Next slide, please. And I'll pass this off to Stacy.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to quickly, so we can get to our breakout room soon, go over another opportunity for engagement, and that is the newly designed educational webinars that Fontan Outcomes Network will host bi-monthly. They will be the first educational webinar is August 9th, 2022. So mark your calendars. And the goal really of these educational webinars is to not only educate patients and families, but also educate clinicians. So nurses, therapists, psychologists, dietitians. So we can all teach and all learn together and listen to each other and share and learn best practices for Fontan care. So mark your calendars for that. And I just wanted to tie the connection in between the single ventricle chats that we're doing in these educational webinars. They're going to work to inform each other. So in our breakout sessions, you'll note today we'll be really focusing on emotional health and resilience to help inform the next educational webinar. And then during the next single ventricle chat, we can debrief on that, and then we can also help inform the next educational webinar whenever we learn of that theme or topic. Perhaps Katie shared that it might be exercise, might be something else, but we will certainly be in touch with everyone through our newsletter and through emails, and make sure that you're aware of what the educational webinars are and that they are open really to every patient, family, and network clinician that is involved in Fontan Outcomes Network. So I think I'm going to throw it back to you, Meg.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you so much to our speakers who joined us today. And at this point, we will politely ask the clinicians that are joining this call to hop off, so that way we can go right into our parent, patient, caregiver only breakout session. Again, thank you so much for everyone who really came together to put this event. And we want to thank, we are so incredibly grateful for our partners with Cardiac Networks United, NPCQIC, and Sisters by Heart, and then the support to all of our funders, Additional Ventures, and Children's Heart Association of Cincinnati.